This collaboration, it fits perfectly. So, I've been wanting to talk about the oddity that is the 1996 made-for-TV Doctor Who movie, which was the screen debut and for a long time only appearance of Paul McGann as the Eighth Doctor for a while. I've really been meaning to get around to this, but it seemed like this deserved a little bit more than just the usual me ranting at the camera. So, I reached out to one of my favorite YouTubers when it comes to Doctor Who material. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Council of Geeks, Stuart Hardy, also known as Stubagful.
Hey, what's up?
Oh. Hey. Sorry, I just, I guess I'd assumed I was going to be working with Real World Stuart.
I'm not sure that Real World Stuart exists anymore. I haven't seen him for ages. Getting quite worried about him, actually. But still, you got me, and I'm almost as good.
Well, I don't really have the time to find anybody else, so you'll do.
What a welcome.
So, right off the bat, kind of a big red flag for me was when the credits started and they didn't kick in with the iconic part of the Doctor Who theme, you know, the... Instead, they started in the middle of the theme, you know, the da-da-da-da-da, which is, I guess because it's more generically heroic.
And then another red flag comes along a few seconds later with the words, special guest star, Eric Roberts.
Oh, we'll be getting to that. No need to dive into the pain right away.
So it starts with this bit of voiceover explaining how the Master was executed, and the Doctor is carrying his remains in the TARDIS.
So, I have a question. Has anyone taken up the challenge of trying to explain why, 1, the Daleks are holding a trial at all, and 2, why they're doing it for the Master of all people?
Oh yeah, there's tons of explanations actually. I got this bit in an 8th Doctor book, a few comic strips tangentially related to said bit, a few fan productions, and about 8 paragraphs of a fan fiction that I wrote when I was 12 that I never bothered finishing. How's that?
Right. Are any of those canon?
And
shouldn't the movie have told us that? You know, instead of just throwing out this random premise so that Doctor Who fans like us are asking all these questions?
Well, yeah, but, right, by having a lazy and hackneyed opening that's full of holes, you can sell gullible and stupid fanboys like me endless spin-off merchandise that tries to explain away all the stuff that we didn't think through.
Wow, oh. Okay, that's actually kind of genius now that I think about it.
You see, sometimes the long game works.
Not the Series 1 episode, The Long Game, though.
Well, no, not that one.
Now, before we move on any further, I need to say, this TARDIS interior, it just makes me so sad.
Because it's gorgeous and we never see it again after this?
Bullseye.
Bit on the nose, though, isn't it?
How so?
You know, tons of clocks in the background. He's reading the time machine. The record starts skipping on the word time.
American television production. Not known for subtlety.
Oh my god, he is a time traveller. Do you get it yet?
I wonder what this guy's deal is. I bet he can fly. That's the vibe I'm getting.
So the Doctor has to land the TARDIS, and as one would expect, he does so on Earth because he's been racking up parking violations everywhere else. But instead of his usual British stomping grounds, he ends up in LA in the 90s and is naturally gunned down by a random street gang.
There was a time I would have made a Second Amendment joke, but they're just, they're never funny anymore. So do we think getting gunned down in a random alley is the least dignified thing that ever kicked off our generation?
See, I quite like this in principle, as it's a bit more of a realistic and relatable cause of death than the other ones where he's either contracted radiation poisoning, absorbed the time vortex, or been sentenced to death by the Time Lords. People die like this every day. This one's not some huge dramatic event that requires 4 specials worth of build-up and sad looks. No, he's gunned down in an alley. It's short and blunt, and it comes out of nowhere.
Okay, maybe, but does he not check the scanner to see who's outside before he steps out anymore?
Okay, you got me there.
I think we can skip past the character introductions of Lee and Grace because they're either crap or weird and not very interesting in either case.
So the Master, apparently now a combination of one of those liquid metal Terminators and a snake, breaks out and takes over another guy's body and gets weird scary eyes.
Okay, now I get that the Master has always been terrified of his own death, and the show really made a point of emphasizing that he goes to further lengths than any other Time Lord in terms of avoiding his ultimate fate. But this movie seems to have confused Master with Devil, because I mean, this is just demonic possession imagery all over the place.
It's not totally unfounded with stuff from the classic show, though, but with stuff like Keeper of Traken, they justified and fleshed it out a bit more so it gives it more meaning. Here, it pretty much happens just because.
So once we get to the regeneration itself, the Doctor has amnesia because... look, I know they justify it in the story by saying that it's tied to the anesthetic that he was given and screwed up his regeneration somehow, but narratively, I don't really get why he has amnesia. I don't know what the plot function of that is, especially considering how quickly he gets over it. Is it just to make him extra clingy to Grace? I suppose, but I wouldn't count that as a benefit.
Who would you rather he latch on to, the generic skeezy hospital administrator?
Honestly, I'd have gone with the peppy morgue attendant.
He was a bit more engaging, but they would still have to kiss, right?
I can't imagine it would have caused that much more of a fan backlash than the kiss with Grace did.
Yeah, true.
But really, the highlight of the whole amnesia thing is it gives us the Doctor, as thunder and lightning is going on, going, "Who am I?" And I am really having a hard time thinking of any more over-the-top moment in Doctor Who. You got anything?
Let me remind you of a little decade called the 1980s, which gave us gems like Resurrection of the Daleks. Ah! I can't stand the confusion in my mind!
Oh, the 80s. I blame the cocaine. So anyway, circling back to our nominal companion, Grace, look, you're more plugged into classic Who, sort of fandom and culture than I am. Is there a consensus among older fans about whether she's good, bad, anything?
Oh, us classic Who fanboys never have a consensus on anything. We just tear chunks out of each other over everything, from Death to the Daleks, to Mel, to the Sixth Doctor's ridiculous coat. And even on Grace, there's two camps. There's the people who actually remember who she is, and the people who can't remember her at all and hazard a guess that she was a side character in that one where he fought the giant talking cactus monster or something.
For my part, she's just very 90s. She's inappropriately snarky to an excessive degree. She's a little too cool for school. And also, you know what? I gotta say this. Since when would a heart surgeon know about things like spatial transference across dimensions? Just being generically smart doesn't automatically make you a font of all knowledge. It's not even like she's being the generic all-purpose scientist cliche. It's just one more opportunity for her to have a snarky line.
But, she likes opera. That's a character trait.
As we're going through this, I'm realizing that a lot of the weirdness about this whole thing, it feels like they came up with stuff that they wanted to do that has a mechanical plot function, and then they didn't bother to justify it with character motivation or even really logic. So like they're going through this story and they decide they want Lee to get the Doctor's artifacts after the Seventh Doctor dies. So they have him hang out in the hospital to get them later. Except that makes absolutely no sense because Lee doesn't know that he's got anything worth taking, and if he hangs around after he's dropped off this total stranger who he doesn't know, he knows he's going to be asked a ton of questions that he doesn't have the answers to. They want the Doctor to have an easy way to recognize the Master, so suddenly we get monster eyes, and then, we get sunglasses to cover those up. They decide they want the Eye of Harmony to be something that the Doctor can open, but the Master can't, but also other characters besides either of them could open as well, so that the Master can have somebody else do it for him. Then we have the whole human thing, so it's decided human eyes can do it, which means the Doctor's half human, which means the Master isn't. And all this stuff works mechanically in terms of getting the whole thing moving forward, but it doesn't work on any other level besides just strict mechanics.
Well, yeah, it looks incredibly lazy, but, right, by contriving this the Doctor is half-human bollocks as a lazy way of making the story work and throwing a massive spanner in the works of 33 years worth of canon that there had been by 1996, that means we can start selling Dumb Fanboys this series of 73 novels that try and make sense of anything that happened in this era for the franchise. See, it may look lazy and contrived, but financially, it's actually the cleverest thing ever if you think about it.
You know, it's rare that I encounter a person even more cynical than I am.
I consider that the highest compliment.
And so we get a pretty standard race against time, stop the master, climax thing. It's functional enough that I'm not sure it's worth picking apart. And so I have to ask, do we want to talk about Eric Roberts as the master?
Do we have to?
Yeah, kinda.
Okay then, I understand where the need to rework the Master came from. He started out as a sci-fi interpretation of a 60s Bond villain. You know, the costume, the twirly moustache. And given the action-heavy focus in the Third Doctor's era, the Venusian karate...
Aikido.
Whatever. The point is, they came up with a recurring villain who suited the format and the time period. Getting into the Fourth Doctor's era, the focus switched heavily to horror, and you got the Master as this sort of rotting zombie-like thing, who ends up stealing the form of Nissa's father and the Keeper of Traken, and is finally seen being possessed by cat people on a dying planet, where we see instances of crazy eyes. The TV movie takes the body-snatching element and the crazy eyes, but it doesn't have an actor who can pull off this role with anywhere near as much dignity as Anthony Ainley, and combines that with other inspiration from other movie villains that the makers want him to be like, because it was 1996 and everyone wanted their movie villain to either be Jack Nicholson's Joker or the Terminator. So he just comes across as this deformed mess of a character made by people who had no idea what they wanted him to be.
I'm sorry, I just got hung up on the phrase, the dignity of Anthony Ainley. That's a bit like hearing that somebody is not as polite as Ted Nugent.
Watch yourself, geek boy.
You know, it's more than just they weren't sure what they wanted him to be. It's like he's a completely different character with a different MO in every single scene he's in. He's all possessed and devil grinning at first. Then he shows up with the sunglasses and the leather, acting like the T-1000, pretending to not be a machine. Then he's all snarly and threatening, and then he's suave and manipulating to the same person that he was threatening just minutes ago. Then he's flamboyant to the point that the beard comment in Time Crash feels like a continuity fix for this movie. It's like they had an entire idea board of villain possibilities from the pitch meeting and never bothered to whittle them down.
Oh, can we not have to think about him anymore? It's making my brain hurt.
Okay, for all the complaints to be made about this thing, let's be fair on a few points. Firstly, it looks really good. Not only are the production values solid and the effects work well enough, but it's shot much better than Classic Who really ever was.
I admire the spirit that went into the TV movie. If you look over the backstory, it's clear that exec producer Philip Segal had good intentions, as he was trying to get a US pilot of Doctor Who off the ground for years. And while it's stupid, over the top and cheesy, so was a large chunk of Classic Who, and I enjoy that in spite of its glaringly obvious flaws. And I enjoy this too, even if the flaws are a bit more egregious in this case.
And I suppose we can always thank this for giving us Paul McGann, though it would be a while before he'd really get to shine in the part.
Worth the wait, though.
Oh, no, definitely. You know, this whole thing, this movie, it's a deeply flawed oddity. But if you can restrain your inner continuity hound, I'd say it's worth it for the visual presentation and McGann in the part.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment.
Well, thanks for turning up, Avatar Stuart. I think that'll just... Wait. Where did real world me go?
Oh god, he's got you too!
Finally, I have form again, and the world will be mine.